Um, see, so welcome into the podcast. Today we are talking about the lore of Wayfinder. So we don't have a lot to really go on right now. So what we're doing is we are going to look at some of the notes that they've posted about the lore, some of the news reports. We're going to look at some of the uh, questions and answers they did revolving around lore, and then we're going to look at the lore of the background characters or the main characters that we play as the Wayfinders that we have available. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that. You know, name's Rich. This is DeathMonkeyXL, and we're talking Wayfinder lore in this episode. Oh, normally we have some kind of interesting music starting, but uh, who knows?
Its arrival brought chaos. But we found a way to control it. We choose the path. We face the danger. We control the chaos. To reconnect our broken world.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this first post called The Precursors. And I was like, why didn't it appear on my screen? What's going on here? But here it is. The precursors. So it says the mysteries of the past threaten the future. In a skylight, a tavern sign glows with flickering phantom light. Still Drake ale served within. Silo's hands his run. Oh, Silo hands his rune cannon to the guard at the door, a horned bruiser who surely has maize blood in his veins. The floorboards shake as Silo walks into the common room. The bar is built over the thunder tunnels, and the next train is on its way to the Avar throne, filled with barrels of God's blood. He studies the room, looking for his contact. It's interesting that God's blood is, like, I'm guessing the barrels of God blood is like a drink, but it's not like capitalized. It feels like milk. Here we have a nice view of the tavern. See Venom's back here, Ven back here in the back. Got that one character from the little teaser photos they gave us. And then it's like a couple of Wingrave outfits, armors here. And can you open the image in a new tab? Let's see. Let's see. If we zoom in, if we can see anything interesting here on this image. I don't see anything too interesting. We see some various enemies out in the world. There's some kind of white polar bear head, some weird Illidan Storm Rage looking mount here, mounted head there. It's like somebody's kind of on a stage. Haven't really figured out this language yet here. But let's go ahead and jump into the next section. It says Silas Vex. This must be his contact. The woman is tall, confident, and unquestionably an arcanist. Silo can feel the power she's holding, the heat of solar flame and the numbing chill of shadow. My friends call me Silo. So Silo's name is Silas Vex. The stranger smiles slightly and shadows shift around her. I'm Omen. Tell me, Silo, what do you know about the precursors? It's said that the celestial architects forged Evenor from primal elements, imposing order on primordial chaos. But humans weren't the first creatures to walk this new formed world. The first children of the architects wielded immense power and ultimately turned that power against their creators and challenged the arcs for control of reality. Today, all that remains of these precursors are the relics of that war. So right off the bat here, we're seeing that in this world we have gods. They're known as celestial architects, and the first creatures were known, the first beings to walk the world made by the architects are known as the precursors. Um, so, what remains of those precursors are the relics of the war, a vast fortress labyrinth, a sword 1,000 feet long, half buried in the petrified corpse of a forgotten colossus, which would be pretty interesting to see, and many other strange wonders scattered across the world. Humanity knows little of this conflict, save the architects were the victors. In the wake of this conflict, the architects left the world in the hands of humanity, leaving one gift behind, the beacons. And so it doesn't say in this note what happens to the precursors. It just says that the architects won the war. So maybe they pulled back, uh, maybe they got banished to another area, and we just haven't seen them yet. Because what it seems like is that the precursors, as we continue on through the lore stories, the precursors are the cause, pretty much, of what's going on here with the gloom and everything, from what it seems like. So these imposing towers are charged with elemental energy, talking about the beacons, a power that can be tapped by skilled arcanists. Throughout human history, the great cities have been built around beacons, from the industrial sprawl of the Avar throne to the many-spired citadel of the Seven Winds. While there have been clashes between nations and the skirmishes between the Avar Imperium and the Maze, the last century has been a time of prosperity, but scholars have always been intrigued by the unanswered questions and the lingering mystery surrounding the arcs and the precursors. 3 years ago, the Arcanist Omen founded the Seekers, a band of scholars and adventurers determined to uncover the secrets of the past. So this was happened in this storytelling of when Silo met Omen 3 years. 3 years before then, Omen founded the Seekers. So we have to remember that the Seekers were founded 3 years ago. In Wayfinder, you are one of Omen's seekers. You came to the Rest Reach following a thread of mystery, little knowing the cataclysm that lay ahead and the role you would play in the apocalyptic battle against the gloom. Little knowing the cataclysm that lay ahead. So, that kind of gives me a question here too: is if are we being called back into the past to fight again? There's a lot of time traveling type stuff happening right here, right now. So the question is, are we being called back from the future, like our dead bodies or whatever, being called from the future to the past as echoes to try to find a new way to fight the battle? That was the precursors. So the next thing we're going to look at here is the echoes. It's because Reborn from the Gloom. This is posted on February 21st. So it says, what's the last thing you remember? Wingrave closes his eyes. Skylight. The deep Eldrin pouring out from that gate screams, the smell of blood and smoke. No time to ask questions, leaping forward, scattering the skirmishers, trying to give the innocents time to escape. I remember Nis driving both blades into an invader who could have been her brother, Silo making some foolish joke, even as he threw himself in harm's way, and you calling us. And so this means that, from what this sounds like, is that Nis, Silo, and Wingrave, they're all end up being part of these Seekers, teamed up to fight against the gloom. And this happened, I'm guessing, before their first fall, is what it sounds like. Like, this is the first time he was called back. Or this could be, another time they called back. Like, this could be something that's happening, like, more presently, like, as in the gameplay that we have now. So, for example, I'm running in now, and then I die, and then I get called back, like, so what's the last thing you remember? So, that could be what's happening right here as well. She goes, Omen nodded. What then? A chamber of crystal and light, a fiend, the like of which I had only read about in the darkest passages of the Avar Creed. It towered over us, and I could feel the hatred boiling off of it. See the tendrils of shadow leaking through its armor. You said you needed time, and so we fought. I remember calling on the light, bracing myself for the attack, and then darkness. It's all vague until I found this. Wingrave drew the dagger from his belt. The blade was formed from dark, patterned steel, but it was a crystal shard in the hilt that drew his attention. He could feel the power pulsing within it. That's just as it happened, Omen said, but you didn't survive that last battle. You were consumed by the gloom. I don't understand. Wingrave struck his hand against his chest, his gauntlet ringing against his armor. I've banished restless spirits before. I know flesh and blood when I feel it. You were consumed in the fall, Wingrave, but the gloom doesn't simply destroy, it remembers. It retains the echoes of everything that was lost. When you enter a lost zone, those echoes become real. You've experienced it already. But when you destroy the anchor, everything in the zone collapses back into chaos and shadow. And so this answers ask another question that I have as well is what happens when you defeat the gloom if everybody in the game are echoes? Like, will that be the end of Wingrave Silo? You know, will that be the end of it? Will we just disappear like this is Final Fantasy X and go back like fighting Zect? Like, oh yeah, we were really there, but we really weren't this entire time. Spoilers. So I'm an echo, Wingrave considered this. You are, but you're much more than that. Your body was destroyed by the gloom, but your essence, your will, remained. The dagger anchors and focuses your willpower, and when you touched it, you instinctively recreated your body, and that's the least of what you can do. You're a wayfinder. So this is very interesting for reasons I can't really go into right now. But let's just say that part is very interesting. You said that before, Wingrave mused, but what does it mean? You're a wayfinder. It means you found your way back home. You have the potential to shape the gloom, to control it, at least in limited ways. You're not invulnerable, but you can rebuild your body if you fall in battle. You can push yourself beyond normal limits. When you defeat creatures in the gloom, you may be able to clutch their essence and weave it into your own form, strengthening yourself. Beyond that, do you remember the sword you were holding when in that last battle? Of course I do. That blade was Wingrave's last link to his old life. He knew every nick along its edge, every pattern in the steel. Think about it now. Imagine it in your hand. Feel the familiar weight of it. Remember its length, the feel of the grip, and look down. And then there his sword was in his hand. So that's kind of crazy. Like how, you know, the weapons we have, the clothes that we're wearing inside this game are all being materialized from from the character's thoughts and memories, which would be more interesting as we break down into having to craft all this stuff. So it's like we're breaking down that essence and putting it into ourselves and using the essence of those items to pull out something different. Omen smiled. That's only the beginning of what you can do. You could call this sword now because you know it so well. But with time, with training, you can draw out other weapons lost in the gloom. Yeah, there it is right there. If Lord Halar and I are correct, you may be able to enforce your will over the gloom itself to mutate the lost zones themselves. And if you can do that, yes, we've been lost for so long, isolated by the gloom. We don't know what's left of our world beyond its shadows. But if you can master this power, you may be able to cut a path through the darkness. You could reconnect our broken world. You could truly be our wayfinder. So what it sounds like here is that the gloom, it says our broken world and reconnect it, but it just seems like going into the gloom is like going into like pure darkness where there's like nothing left. So, but like there's something there. It's just you can't see it because the gloom is like, you know, it's like a giant ooze or whatever over it, and like taking out that whatever the core is will cause it to dissipate somewhere, maybe dissipate that energy to restore that part of the land the gloom is occupying, potentially, maybe. There's still much he couldn't remember about his past, about how he had come to work with Omen, and what had brought them to Skylight on that fateful day. And now he was an echo, a wayfinder. A part of him wanted to deny it all, to drop both sword and dagger and drown his doubts, and a tanker at the bitter end, but he still believed in the celestial architects. He still believed in the light, and if this was the role he had to play, so be it. Wingrave sheathed his sword and dagger and turned back to Omen. Where do I begin? Cue Wayfinder music. So here's Omen here. It's pretty interesting. I don't think Omen has a dagger, but it seems like everybody's gonna has to have a dagger to live. If so, I wonder what happens if they lose that dagger, or will they be able to just call that dagger back again like they can the swords? Because it's like he grabbed the dagger and willed itself into existence. But without the dagger, it's like nothing. So like everything, his whole essence is in this dagger. Is what it seems like, which makes it more interesting when we think about that venomous trailer. Venomous trailer we had with the one shadow hologram dude bouncing around. Definitely more curious about that story now. So this is the first one. Was posted December 6th, 2022. That says Adventure into Wayfinder, and it gives a little backstory about the world. Says control the chaos to restore Evenor. The world is broken. The architects have fallen, and our fight has just begun. Imagine a world of magic and wonder, a world where arcanists bend reality to their will, and mighty war masters weave spells into steel. Imagine a band of champions joining forces to save the world from an ancient and deadly evil and failing. The precursors have slain the celestial architects, and our world is being consumed by the gloom. Reality is breaking down, a dark energy is spreading across the land, shrouding it in corruption and ultimately collapsing reality into chaos. Reavers and brigands fight over the ruins, and deep within the shadows, the precursors hunt the last of our gods. The apocalypse is over, the great battle was lost, and the world is dying. Reality is collapsing, and brigands and looters fight over the scraps that have been left behind. But for the survivors, you are their last hope. You are a wayfinder. So not everybody is gone in the world. There are like natural, regular humans. Not everybody is an echo or a wayfinder. In Wayfinder, you are one of the last champions of the accursed dying world. You are an echo of a fallen hero, but you have survived the gloom that is consuming the world and returned with the power to fight it. So this is kind of an interesting sentence because if you're a fallen hero and you're an echo, then you didn't survive. You're just pure will. You're a Green Lantern, but with a dagger. You can walk on the edge of reality and live to tell the tale, reconnecting the scattered pieces of this world, this broken world. But first, you must defeat the Reavers and the Raiders that keep your world frayed. Along with your fellow Wayfinders, you must protect the survivors huddled around your beacon of light from these monsters that prey on them, both human and otherwise. Sooner or later, you must face the fiends who slew our gods and broke the world. You must remember who you were and decide who you will become. And learn more about Wayfinder here. So before we jump into that, we're going to go into some Wayfinders, and then we're going to check out some of these questions and answers from the Discord. But just looking at the lore part of it, we'll do a more in-depth video on the channel, going over all of the questions and answers that are here. And we don't know like a lot of the lore person for Wayfinder. His name is Joe Fry. So he's answering a lot of these questions here for the lore section. But until we jump into that, questions and answers of the lore section, let's look at these Wayfinders and get the backstory. So Windgrave here. So Windgrave is part of the Avar Imperium. He's a Templar and Spellforce armorer. We're just going to go into their backstories. So it says Windgrave is an Archon Templar clad in Spellforce armor and sustained by his faith in the architects. Long before the Gloomfall, he fought monsters in the shadows and defended the people of the Empire from the terrifying threats of the maze. He is a natural leader and a true hero born up by his honest faith in the light and the Empire. These are the things that Windgrave's Echo remembers when he is first reborn. Of all the champions, Windgrave is the one who most feels like a hero, a true champion of light. However, as the player uncovers more of Windgrave's past, they will uncover the darker side of the Empire and the Archons. The fact that not all denizens of the maze are monsters, and brutal actions like the massacre of the monks at Aurelian. Ultimately, Wingrave's Echo will have the opportunity to be a better man than the original, to live up to his ideas, and be the champion he could and should have been. And we'll be able to see a little bit more about these monks at Aurelian and the denizens of the maze as we go into the Q&A. But next on our list is Silo. So it says that before the Gloomfall, the Shrike Syndicate was a network of smugglers and mercenaries who played both sides in the endless conflict between the Avar Imperium and the Maze. While many saw the Shrikes as criminals, they lived by a code. Silo was born Silas Vex. The Vexes were the leaders of the Syndicate and made sure that the Shrikes served the common people of the West Reach. So Silo was an exceptional Shrike. He was a Vex also, which means he was a leader. An excellent marksman with a knack of designing explosives and arcane gadgets, but he would always felt the shadow of his parents, the expectation that he would eventually assume the mantle of leadership. Silo is a clever scoundrel, equally quick with a quip and a blade. He remembers grand heist and feasts with the people of the West Reach, but as an echo returned from the gloom, his memories are incomplete. Silo doesn't remember what happened to his parents or how he came to be in Skylight when the Gloomfall struck. In this broken world, the Shrikes have become a menace. What has Silo forgotten? So it's pretty interesting as he exists. How long ago did this happen? If we look back at the other post, it said that, let's go back real quick. She left it open. I believe it is in the precursors where it says that there's been like a time of prosperity for the last century. But there still has been skirmishes between the Avar Imperium and the Maze. So like how long have they been playing both sides of that? The guard had Maze in his blood, whatever that means, however you could tell that. So that's interesting. And how long has he been gone to where now the Shrikes have been become a menace? Like it's like the next year. It's been 3 years, and he just doesn't have any memory of the past 3 years. It's gonna be kind of interesting to find out as we dive into that. And Silo's definitely gonna be one of the characters I'm playing at launch. Also Nis. So it says, and the Eldrin are the first children of the broken world, formed from the blood of infinites spilled in the Aegis War. So the Eldrin are the first children of the broken world, not to be confused with the first children of the world. So this is after they came to be after the Gloomfall. There are Eldrin in the woods and water, but Nis is one of the deep Eldrin, born in an abyss of stone and soil untouched by the sun. Her people shape shadows like clay. Nis mastered the shadow dance as a child, learning to sculpt shielding shrouds and deadly blades from insubstantial darkness. For all their many gifts, the Eldrin are a dying people, whose essence fades with each generation. When the ancient mother of shadows came to them, promising renewed strength in exchange for absolute loyalty, most swore themselves to her service. When Nis and her clan refused to bow to the precursors, most were slain. So the Mother of Shadows is a precursor, which is interesting when we learn about the weapons that people use. And I guess we can go back to and look at the weapons of Silo and Wingrave, because they do have some lore attached to those as well. With Wingrave's blade, it says its name's Sebastian. The names of the celestial architects are woven into the steel, and a champion with faith can still call on their light. So Bastion, I'm guessing, is the name of the celestial archon, a celestial archon, and it calls upon Bastion to do whatever he needs to do with the power of light. So Longshot was built by Salin Vex, the first Strike. He won a fortune from the Avar Reeve in a high stakes shooting contest and uses gold to found his network of smugglers. So, like his great great granddaddy's gun is what we have here. For Nis and the Shadow Dancers, Night's Edge is the ancestral's blade of the Duskull Eldrin. The spirits of the fallen Duskull are bound to these daggers and strike out at enemies of a worthy wielder. So as they die, they get it's like a gloom dagger, pretty much, but they get trapped inside the dagger, pretty much, buried inside the dagger for the most part. And so the Mother of Shadows is a precursor. This is a grim and deadly warrior, a silent assassin who strikes from the shadows. But as an echo returned from the gloom, there is much she cannot remember. She knows she endured countless hardships in her time of exile, but the details escape her. She remembers challenging the Mother of Shadows, but not how she survived. But these memories may yet return to her. And that's because she probably grabbed for a dagger, and it happened to be the Gloom dagger, and willed herself back alive because she's used to having daggers. But it's very interesting that the rest of the Eldrin are working for the precursors because they swore loyalty to them for absolute power and all this good stuff. Sinja has a ceremonial weapon of the champion of the Imperial Arena. It's used only in the most important matches. It's deeply insulting to use this glorious blade against goblins and strikes. So, a weapon ability will have her use the blade against goblins and strikes. So I guess she doesn't really care about that. Sinja is a legend across the Avar Imperium, the greatest champion ever to grace the arena. Where many gladiators face death with grim resolve, Sinja delights in every battle. Even now, Sinja still hears the crowds when she fights, still imagines the cheering throngs urging her on. In truth, she loves battle because it is a distraction from her pain. Sinja comes from the dominion of the Seven Wilds, a place where arcane magic is woven into everyday life, where arcanists and war masters alike wield power over the elements. While she is far from home, the storm still answers her call. She is the last of the Iron Sisters, a proud order of deadly warriors. She doesn't talk about what happened to her sisters, but there is no question that their loss is a knife in her heart. That whatever happened in the Dominion drove Sinja to the other side of the world and into the endless distraction of the arena. Now that the gloom has swallowed the arena, Sinja needs a new battle to distract her from her pain, and the gloom is the greatest enemy of all. Sinja is a fearless warrior and an indomitable foe, but as an echo returned from the gloom, there is much she can't remember. I seem to see a pattern here. She remembers fighting alongside the Iron Sisters, but she cannot remember exactly how they felt. She remembers countless battles in the arena, but she knows she can't remember every enemy she faced. Could forgotten enemies come back to haunt her? So I don't know if she would have any like real enemies since she was a gladiator champion, and that's just part of the job. But it'd be pretty interesting to see. Could be some enemies from the Dominion that drove her to the other side of the world. I don't know if that's something that we'll see right away. It might be something that pops up in one of the feature and battle passes. It might open up that area for us to go and travel to. Next is Kairos. So Kairos' weapon is Epitaph. It is crafted by the infamous Mother of Shadows, and it feeds on the essence of its enemies. Even as it spills their blood, it whispers to you, urging you to battle. Now, that's kind of interesting because we know the Mother of Shadows is a precursor. So could Kairos belong to a faction that worshipped the precursors? So there is a place known as the Kingdom of Ashes. Bones are scattered across beaches of black sand, and the charred remnants of crystal spires still reach toward the sky. This has been a shunned ruin for thousands of years, but Cairo still remembers it as it once was, a glorious civilization whose achievements dwarf those of the Evar Imperium or the Maze. And so because it's shunned, I think with it being shunned means that they were for the precursors. Because if it was like part of the Celestials, it might have been like a revered land. So the Kingdom of Ashes is what happened to it. Probably after they tried to join up with the precursors, there was probably some backlash that came down on them because of that. Ended up taking out the civilization. He remembers studying the nature of reality itself and even learning how to transcend his own flesh to become a being of pure mystical energy, bound to a skeleton of arkstone and crystal. While he possesses devastating power, Kairos is first and foremost a scientist. He is determined to stop the gloom. He will not watch another civilization be destroyed, but he believes the key to defeating the gloom is to understand it. Kairos is a deadly war mage and a brilliant researcher, but he has been lost in the void for countless centuries, and there's much he has forgotten or never knew. What became of his people? How did his wondrous nation become the kingdom of ashes? And did he have something to do with it? The answers must be out there waiting to be found. And so this the I think what happened here, this is me guessing, is that the Mother of Shadows came to whatever town the Kingdom of Ashes used to be, met with Kairos, made a deal like, yo, you love science. I got this area for you to check out. It's going to be amazing. You're going to get so much research done. You're going to love it. Got to go there, take this amazing weapon I made for you, and go check this out. So he goes in there, checks it out, probably unleashes unleashes the Gloomfall upon everybody by accident because he's kind of like tricked into doing it. While he's in there exploring, he's in there lost inside the void, which is going to be the gloom areas. This is the void. He's lost in there, lost in the void, just exploring it. Can find his way out because probably the Kingdom of Ashes lost his point to return to. He didn't have a way to return. Eventually, he ended up finding this dagger and came back. But I'm thinking, once he jumped in, everything else came out, destroyed his point of entry, and which is also his exit, and which is why he's like that. Kairos will be the first person I unlocked though, I think. Excuse me. So let's go ahead and jump into these questions and answers from the lore part of the Discord. It says, is the Citadel of the Seven Winds and the Dominion of the Seven Winds from Sinja's backstory the same? So the question to that is yes. The idea here is that the people of Evenor have knowingly or unknowingly built their most prosperous cities and structures around these strange structures known as the beacons, just like our hero's main hub of Skylight has a beacon. The Dominion is one of the nations like of our Imperium or the Maze to other nations. The Citadel is a massive spire that Dominion have built out of around the beacon they found. Just as mentioned, the Avar throne was built out of a beacon as well. Is the Empire the only one minting coin? Do other civilizations just barter and trade? All three of the major powers used currency. The Maze's economy functioned quite differently than the Imperium, but coin was still useful to them. The Maze isn't undeveloped by any means, and neither is the Dominion. Their skill set is just in different areas. Think of it like this. Imperium equals they're the arcanic science peeps. They use magic to enhance technology to their purposes and would be responsible for things like the creation of arcanic firearms. The Dominion are masters of the raw elements of magic. They're closer to what you would consider mages or wizards, and their society developed around instinctual use and study of the elements. And the Maze equals jacks of all trades. They use whatever they need to get by. They have a little technology, a little magic, but they're most famous for their use of alchemical compounds. I want to go back a little bit here, back to Sinja. And look at Sinja's the Dominion. Arcanists and War Masters. So I wonder if Omen comes from there also. But like it can't be like gone, like it's part of the story. And like we know, the kingdom of ashes is the kingdom of ashes. So the maze is not an actual maze; it's a nation or a nation in a maze. The maze refers to a nation, but there are also labyrinth shenanigans. Though that is all I will say. Unprompted and a lore post. Aurelian equals parts library, temple, and arcane workshops. Aurelian was once a monastery for the Order of the Silver Codex. Originally founded as an imperial outpost in a dangerous frontier, the ruins of Aurelian boast imposing fortifications which loom over the highlands. Rumor tells that the monastery was abandoned during the height of the Maze War, though the details of the raid on its denizens remain unclear. Still, it is well documented that Aurelian once supported a robust population of monks and travelers. The Seekers believe there may still be supplies of both technological and arcane boons capable of restoring skylight hidden within the monastery's walls. Yet mystical wards and ancient traps linger in the ruins, plaguing any scavengers that dare explore Aurelian's forlorn halls. Thus, like most silver linings in the highlands, little hope remains. So there's an interview that describes the precursors as a mysterious alien race, but this recent lore post seems to imply they were created by the architects here on Evenor. And so the question is, are both of those statements correct? And they're saying that they don't want to go deep into the question as it touches on lore pieces that the story will cover, but suffice to say, both statements are accurate. So the precursors and the celestial, well, they're called celestials. So I'm assuming they're coming from space. So the celestial architects, space aliens. Aliens. What's the relationship between the Wayfinder and Omen's seekers? We are a Wayfinder, but also a seeker. Are all seekers also Wayfinders? Are all Wayfinder also seekers? The seekers are the forces led by Omen and Skylight that are trying to put the world back together, and Wayfinders are the seekers' greatest champions brought back from the depths of the gloom. And to explain that more, you're in Skylight, like you mentioned Lord Halar. I don't think that person's an Echo. I think just the Wayfinders, the people that we play as Echoes. So like your NPCs that we'll be dealing with, those are all seekers. Like Skylight is essentially seeker camp. And then the Wayfinders are the people that do all the fighting, the adventurers pretty much, are going to be the Wayfinders because they can find their way back from the gloom using their gloom daggers. This is another one that came from a lore post, a leak. It says, I present the first voice line from the game as well as some new and exciting lore to discuss and speculate on. We've said before that all of our characters have a rich history, backstory, and relationships, and we can't wait for more of that in game. The Elgin were never part of the architect's plan for our world. They're a cursed, dying people, and they know it. I fought Elgin in the catacombs beneath imperial cities, scheming to destroy us, and now they may have actually done it. So forgive me if I don't trust Nis. This comes from Wingrave. And as you saw earlier, that the Eldrin were born from like spilled blood, like they just came to be. They willed themselves into existence. But they have families and stuff. But it's like each time a new member of the family is born, they're like sacrificing part of their selves to create another life, like literally. So they don't have like a long life to live. As the generations go down, the generations will just be that's it, end of the generation. What is Wingrave's favorite food? The meme answer I want to give is like plain white bread, but probably a traditional Avar food. Maybe I'll put that into an item description somewhere. We were curious which characters would canonically drop the F bomb. Silo would have no qualms dropping the F bomb for sure. Nis, if she was in a dire sitch. I can see Sinja saying it, but for a more fun sailor, we're all friends here kind of way. Wingrave would be staunchly opposed. Kairos would make weird arcane screeches. So that's an interesting. Kairos would make weird arcane screeches. So can Kairos not speak now because he's pure energy? Has he lost the ability to talk? That's interesting. Interesting thought. What is Nis's favorite Pop Tart? Silo. Hey Nis, what's your favorite Pop Tart? Nis. What is this tart? Why is it popping? What color lipstick would Nis wear, if any? She's not really a lipstick kind of gal, but if for some reason she was convinced to wear some for the odd occasion, maybe dark purple, lilac. Got to keep that color scheme consistent, or the blood of her enemies. Does Kairos just look like that, or is his hood concealing it because the cosmetics make it look like that's just how he looks? Kairos ascended beyond the confines of a mortal body long ago, so in other words, yes, he does just look like that. He comes from a place called the Kingdom of Ashes that exists as only ruins now, though it was much more advanced than any of the civilizations that persist to modern times in Evenor. I will look out for secrets related to his homeland to learn more about his people. I noticed in Nist's background and mentioned the infinites and the Aegis War that take place to make the Eldrin. I was just wondering if that's like far in the past before Gloomfall and what the infinites were in relationship to celestial architects. The Aegis War is the distant past. Keep an eye on item descriptions, weapons, accessories whenever you get a chance to play for answers to some of these questions. And so we're looking at it, it's like it says children the first children of the broken world though. So how long has the gloom been on the world? Because the world wasn't always the broken world until the gloom came. And so they're not actually saying he's not actually saying that it's before the gloomfall. He's just saying that the Aegis War is the distant past, which is it's pretty interesting. You think about it like that, right? Because the um the broken world, as we see from Omen, is what it's called because of the gloom. The world has been broken into pieces because of the gloom. Very interesting. Very interesting. The gloom being this reality bending creation juice, right? The gloom is a mysterious force that when it touches people, land, or anything, it warps and distorts reality, creating infinite versions of realities, places, and people. You're dead. So you're just instantly dead if you get touched by the gloom. It's continuing. It is why you can have 5 Windgraves running around, or 3 Nists, or 19 Kairos. They're all echoes of the actual character who is lost in the gloom. You all share the same past, but not the same future, meaning that you all come from the same area, but from that point on, you branch off and do whatever you want to do. You are an echo of a fallen hero, was pretty clear in my humble opinion, but we can clarify. Them Wayfinders be dead. 50 Windgraves is the same reason every time you step into the gloom is different with different layouts, enemies, loot, events, quests, etc. Whatever the gloom touches, it twists and reshapes. We aren't planning some Warframe second dream twist. So with the lore in the future, would you guys consider doing a cinematic short story between all the characters or certain characters? I can't say for everyone, but I loved reading the lore and wait for more. Without revealing too much, yes, our very cinematic you'll see is exactly this. We did see a little bit of a cinematic with Venomous in this. As they say, they do have some kind of close connections to each other. And I wonder what that is. What's the relationship between Westreach and Highlands? Because they seem to be really close. Westreach is the larger region. Highland is like the sub-region within Westreach. Does a monster of the gloom have a specific name? That is to say, classifications on their species, not like a race or creature of, say, goblins, but rather than call them monsters, what are they really? Just check with the Lord of Lore. Gloom creatures, monsters are the best term to probably use now. Their existence might be different than what you expect. I always thought they were referred to as echoes. The gloom creatures would be slightly different from echoes. Echoes are manifestations of things which existed in the world prior to the gloom consuming them. So that's interesting because I'm pretty sure in not the precursors one, the echoes one. The echoes, it says you're different from those in the gloom. Let's see if I can find where it said that. But yeah, so it's like the gloom creatures are still like creatures in the world, just kind of like twisted, made into gloom creatures. Is what I was getting at here. But I could be wrong. I could have misunderstood. Either way, we'll all see everything when the beta, the alpha, the closed beta test drops this week actually on the 24th, I think it is. So Wednesday or the 25th, which is Thursday, one of those days. 24th or the 25th, Let's double check real quick for you guys listening in. The 24th. So Wednesday we'll be seeing if all that is legit. What's going on with the creatures? If they're just called gloom creatures, if they have actual names, if they're labeled meant after anything that we see in the world, like a rabbit, you can call it a gloom rabbit. We'll be able to see. But that is all the lore we have for today. There's a good lore discussion going on in the Discord, the lore cave. So if you guys would like to check that out, I'll have a link to the Discord in the description once this goes live, the Discord for Wayfinder, if you're not already in it. And check it out. A lot of stuff going on in there, a lot of cool thoughts and theories that we won't go into here because I don't want to steal their thunder. If they were inside the chat, we could go over it, we could do that. But yeah, so our next video here on Wayfinder is going to be on this Discord questions and answers, which is just like a compilation of questions and answers from the Discord that's on the Wayfinder wiki. So look forward to that. And until next time, guys, thanks for listening or watching, whatever you may be doing. We'll see you guys in the next one, which should be after the beta. And I'm going to try to arrange something interesting if I have time to. So fingers crossed on that. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.